shuttle flight. We talked to Bob Crippen, the pilot of that first mission yesterday, and was talking about nobody knew what to expect strapping into the space shuttle on nearly 7 million pounds of thrust, this winged vehicle. And here we are 30 years, 135 flights later. I don't think we'll ever see a vehicle like this again. The majesty of it, Rex Walheim, the flight engineer, talked about the size, the sheer spectacle of the shuttle taking off. They're going to replace it with smaller vehicles, cheaper, easier to operate, but they won't be as dramatic.
We are approaching 30 seconds now to the final launch of the space shuttle, the 135th mission.
And we've got a hold in the countdown, Scott.
And they're holding at 31 seconds. What is that about?
They're checking a launch commit criteria violation. We're waiting to see what the resolution might be. They could hold for about 2 minutes here before they would have to scrub. They're trying to get clearance to go. It's going to take a minute. The engineering team is looking at the problem. I haven't heard what it is yet. But obviously they're hopeful they can get this resolved.
Get a verification that the GDA has fully retracted.
They're making sure the gaseous vent arm, I believe, is fully retracted. That's the big beanie that sits on top of the external tank that carries vapor away from the liquid oxygen section. They're making sure that it's fully retracted. I think that's what they said.
We've gotten some indication this piece of equipment hasn't pulled it completely away from the shuttle.
Apparently. That's what they're looking at right now.
There's a picture of it there. To the right-hand side is the giant external fuel tank of the shuttle.
They're going to press on, Scott. They're going to clear this and pick up the count.
The clock is stopped at 31 seconds. We expect it to start again here shortly. Enormous crowds around the Kennedy Space Center. They estimated as many as 750,000 people all around this part of Florida have come from all over the country to see what, again, no one will ever see again. A flight of a space shuttle.
All right, guys.
An enormously majestic thing.
That huffing noise you hear in the background is the auxiliary power unit that provides the muscle to move the engine nozzle during launch. You can hear the exhaust pumping out the back of the motor.
We're ready to go.
Just said they're ready to go.
Very good. And launch director with that cleanup, we're going to go ahead and proceed. Yes, sir. Please do. All right. Now,
We're going to start
we got to pick up the clock here momentarily. GLS, you can begin the clock on your mark. Copy that. Countdown clock will resume on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
Now 30 seconds and counting to the launch of Atlantis. Let's listen in to the communications to the capsule, to the aircraft, the spacecraft, I should say, as we go down to the final seconds.
Firing chain is armed.
15.
Go for main engine start. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All 3 engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. The final liftoff of Atlantis on the shoulders of the space shuttle. America will continue the dream.
Roger roll, Atlantis. Houston now controlling the flight of Atlantis. The space shuttle spreads its wings one final time for the start of a sentimental journey into history. 24 seconds into the flight, roll program complete. Atlantis now heads down, wings level on the proper alignment for its 8.5-minute ride to orbit. 4.5 million pounds of hardware and humans taking aim on the International Space Station. 20 seconds into the flight, the 3 liquid fuel main engines throttling back to 72% of rated performance in the pocket, reducing stress on the shuttle as it goes transonic for the final time.
Breaking the sound barrier now.
Engines now revving up, standing by for the throttle up call.
Atlantis, go and throttle up, no action, DT.
Nothing like it in the world. Bill Harwood, what are we seeing now from Capcom?
We have a camera on the side of the external tank that they beam down that show the view from the orbiter itself. They're obviously looking for any signs of foam insulation that might come off during the ascent. They could pose a debris threat to the shuttle. Nothing obvious in the early moments of flight. There was a warning alarm for a pressure alarm in the cockpit. Mission Control told them no problem on that, no action required. So far, so good.
Shuttle astronaut Steve Robinson, what's going on in there at this moment? You've done this 4 times.
Well, I wish I were on there right now, but those guys are having the time of their life, and they're focused as human beings can possibly be. They had an alarm go off that turns out to be a transducer on the cabin pressure, and so Mission Control radioed up, told them not to worry about it.
There go the solid rocket boosters, jettisoning after 2 minutes of flight.
Scott, they're up about 30 miles in altitude right now, going about a mile a minute already. A mile a second, I should say, already.
The space shuttle running now on its 3 main engines, draining the fuel out of that enormous fuel tank, which we will also see separate from the orbiter here in just a few minutes. Steve, everything looks safe, going well?
Look beautiful, look fantastic, just like a space shuttle launch.
Atlantis, 2-engine cow. 2-engine cow.
Bob Orr is here at the Kennedy Space Center with us, up on the roof of this structure, which just shook like it was in an earthquake. Bob Orr, what are you seeing there?
Scott, this never gets old. I have to tell you, when you're on the roof, you feel a shuttle launch more than see it. We had a relatively low cloud cover, and as the shuttle lifted off, it was a spectacular view here. It drew applause from everyone outside. It disappeared quickly into the clouds, but we could still feel the vibration. It was a majestic launch, and it was one that just 3 hours ago that didn't look possible. But so far, everything is going great, Scott. It's a big day and a good news day here at Kennedy Space Center.
An estimated 750,000 people have come to this part of Central Florida to see this spectacle. Kelly Cobiella is out there with some of them. Kelly, what are they saying?
Scott, there were a series of cheers when the shuttle went up, when you saw that big flame out here 12 miles away from the launch pad. Another cheer when you heard the rumble of the engines. And then the crowd gave one final round of applause for the shuttle program as that shuttle disappeared up into the clouds. People here maybe wiped away a tear or two, but mostly it was smiles, picture taking, and lots of applause.
We are 4 minutes after liftoff at this point. They are very likely heading all the way to orbit. They have passed the point that they would land in Europe if there was a problem with the space shuttle main engines. So far, no sign of any problems of any kind on this mission. What happens next, Steve Robinson?
Just listening to NASA, Rob Navius there describing it well. The solid rocket boosters came off, and now they're in a very smooth portion of the ascent. The whole shuttle is losing weight as it uses up fuel, and so the G's are building up on the crew and on the vehicle, and so they're being pressed into their seats more and more. And I'm looking forward to getting above the atmosphere, rolling heads up, and then what happens is the shuttle goes up, and then turns over this way to go fast. Reach orbital velocity. That's what's happening.
Well, we can only experience it live one time, but the magic of television is we can look at it again and again, and I'd like to see it one more time. We'll re-rack the tape and have a look at the launch. Here it was just 5 minutes ago.
1-0 and liftoff, the final liftoff of Atlantis. On the shoulders of the space shuttle, America will continue the dream.
Roger roll, Atlantis.
Houston now controlling the flight of Atlantis. The space shuttle spreads its wings one final time for the start of a sentimental journey into history.
Bill Harwood, there is nothing like this. There is nothing like this on the drawing boards. We are not likely to see a spacecraft of this size, complexity, and capability, perhaps in our lifetimes.
No, we're really not. I was just thinking, watching it come off the pad, that I'm never going to see that again. And we're all so used to it. The shuttle is almost iconic in this country in terms of that winged orbiter that we're all so used to, and we're not going to see it again. It's quite a moment.
Steve, you have flown on 4 shuttle flights. You've been with NASA how long? 30?
In 1 more week, it'll be 35 years.
35 years. What does this mean to you, seeing the last shuttle go?
Well, to tell you the truth, Scott, I'm kind of mission focused. I'm the Capcom for this mission, which means that I'm one of the guys in mission control that actually speaks to the crew. So at 3 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'll be in mission control and back in Houston and starting my job here. So I'm very focused on the crew, their readiness, and the mission ahead of them.
4 crew members on this flight.
Only 4.
Usually 7 on a shuttle flight. Why only 4?
Well, the idea is normally when we launch a shuttle to the International Space Station, we have a rescue capability with another shuttle behind it. Well, clearly, we don't have that now. And so if we do need to park these guys on the International Space Station, we'd have to bring them down on a phased series of Russian Soyuz spacecraft, and force as many as we can get them.
We're going to go back down to the live picture of the shuttle. We are 7 minutes after liftoff, and in about a minute or so, the main engines of the shuttle will shut down as planned, and the orbiter will be orbiting the Earth at, believe it or not, 8 times the speed of a rifle bullet. Bill Harwood, what will the astronauts be doing on this 12-day mission?
It's a very important mission for the International Space Station, Scott. You know, they have some private companies trying to build unmanned cargo ships to take over for the shuttle to keep the supplies going to the space station to support a 6-person crew. They haven't flown yet. NASA's concerned that if they run into any technical problems, they'd like a little bit of a hedge against that, some insurance. This flight's going to take up enough equipment, really, to keep the station crew good for a full year through 2012 in case the commercial companies run into some problems.
We should be about 30 seconds from main engine cutoff, and is it at that point, Steve, that we see the external tank fall away?
20 seconds after that. What the crew is undergoing 3G press down to their chest right now. It's hard to breathe. They're looking forward to that main engine cutoff, which means the rocket engine stop and the thrust stops, and then you're now floating in space.
And we should see that main engine cut off momentarily. You can start to see some atmospheric effects there. There still is an atmosphere up there. They're very high, but it's an interesting thing to watch.
Well, we just heard confirmation of main engine cutoff. Let's wait for the external tank to separate from the orbiter. That's the orbiter at the top. You're looking at the bottom of the Atlantis, at the top of the screen, the bottom of the screen. There goes the external fuel tank falling away. The camera is literally on the external fuel tank. There goes the Atlantis rising into space. They are now safely in orbit, and it is the last time that anyone will ever see that. A very successful launch today. Atlantis is safely in space on the final shuttle mission. There will be more about all of this on your local news, on this CBS station, on CBSNews.com, and tonight on the CBS Evening News. Until then, I'm Scott Pelley, CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center.